colonists.
Mm-hmm.
Trump is going to have agility and tactical flexibility. Not a single word comes out of Hillary's mouth that hasn't been polled, repolled, focus grouped, roundtable, committee, considered, and then sent to her in written talking points.
Yeah.
Literally nothing the woman says came from her own brain. Whereas Trump, as you know, he's interesting. He's provocative. He's honest. He tells you what he really thinks, whether it's politically correct or not. And frankly, I think it is one of the keys to his appeal.
Absolutely. You want to know what he thinks. And sometimes he'll say something, then he'll have to walk back and clarify it a little bit. But I'm fine with that. I think people appreciate that transparency. We have no transparency from government now, but we are going to find out what Hillary Clinton really does say, because we've got these tell-all books that are coming out from the people who were putting their lives on the line to protect her. And when they say, good morning, ma'am, she just looks at the guy and says, F you, you know? I mean, this is the Clinton that the people around her who were protecting her with their lives knew.
Well, and I read yesterday that the Clinton spin machine, the Clinton press operation, very actively discouraging the networks and the cable news networks from interviewing the Secret Service agent Gary Byrne about his book. That in itself is outrageous. This is Soviet-style censorship. Why are the opinions or presentations of Mr. Byrne any less credible or less important or less covered by the First Amendment than the blathering by Bill and Hillary Clinton? It just shows the arrogance of these people. By the way, I read Byrne's book. It is terrific, and it won't be suppressed.
That's right. That's right. All they're going to do is drive their media organizations further into oblivion, because you'll have people like Sean Hannity pick it up. We'll pick it up. We'll talk about it. We'll interview them. That's what the word is going to get out there. Roger Stone, thank you so much for joining us. StoneZone.com. That's great news about that victory in Cleveland. We're going to be right back with Paul Joseph Watson from the UK to break down his point of view on Brexit. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show on this June 24th, 2016, a day that will go down in history. There's a great editorial from Tim Stanley of The Telegraph, and he starts out saying, there were two referendums on Thursday. The first was on the membership in the EU. The second was on the British establishment. Leave won both, and the world will never be the same again. He says it's impossible to overstate how remarkable this victory is. 20 years ago, Euroscepticism was a backbench Tory rebellion and a political cult. It was a dispute located firmly on the right with little appeal to labor voters. It took UKIP to drag it to the center of political life. It was given momentum by the issue of immigration. Slowly, it has emerged as a lightning rod for anti-establishment activism. And I would say not just anti-establishment, but anti-globalism. We all see how this is working out for us economically, as well as culturally. He says, slowly the establishment consensus came to resemble not just a conspiracy, but worse, a confederacy of dunces. I think that's absolutely true. Joining us now from the UK is our own Paul Joseph Watson. Paul, did you really think that they would let them win this vote? I mean, I am absolutely ecstatic and amazed that this actually won.
I was not very optimistic last night. I mean, we had the huge run-up with the propaganda, the Joe Cox death. They had a poll that came out. It was a quasi-exit poll right before the vote started, or after the voting just finished around 10 o'clock, which found 52% in favor of Remain. Mm-hmm. So then everyone, all the virtue signalers, all the leftists got out on Facebook, bragged about it, you know, rolled in it, celebrated it, rubbed it in everyone's faces. And then what began to happen, as you mentioned, was that all these classically Labour areas, and Labour is obviously the socialist collectivist party, but it was in these Labour areas where you have quite poor working class white people whose livelihoods have been completely eviscerated by things like mass immigration. They've been completely ignored by Westminster. They've been completely cut off from, having a stake in the country. They were massively voting for Leave. So in places like Sunderland, they only expected 6% to vote in favour of Leave over Remain. It was 22%. And from that first moment, that was the first vote that came in, the Remain side started to panic because they thought, hang on here, something's going on. then Newcastle came in. That wasn't as expected. So the first results were a complete shock, and then it got progressively more interesting as the night went on.
Because then it started seesawing back and forth. I looked at that and I thought, oh, you know what? You're watching these massive swings. I think somebody said we've had a 6-month high in the pound followed by a 6-month low, and all in the same day. I was looking at this and saying, yeah, they're just playing everybody. They're going to roll this out a little bit so that they can roil the markets and make some money, because that's how these guys make money, is off of volatility. So I thought, yeah, here it comes now. They're going to say Remain is there. And if they don't have a massive landslide here, they're going to come in and swamp it with the votes that they stuff in these areas that they control. But that didn't happen, and I was absolutely amazed.
No, and it didn't happen because those, traditionally Labour voting, working class white people all voted to leave.
Yeah.
So you had this kind of sneering, snobbish, middle class elite in London who were all voting to Remain. They were counting on London being a huge turnout to swing it the way of Remain. But it was interesting. The night before, we had the most amazing thunder and lightning and rain. There were floods everywhere. And then right before people finished work yesterday, the heavens opened again. So if you believe in God, then, he's for vote leave.
That's right. That's right. He pushed it. It was the people who were committed to this, who were informed voters. They were going to turn out come hell or high water, and they did. That's great. And we're seeing, this is one of the interesting things, article that's up on Drudge Report. Alan Greenspan, you talk about all the experts who are saying, oh, this is, we got to have this, trying to create fear with people, trying to tell them that this is about racism and xenophobia and everything. And now we got Alan Greenspan. Listen to the way that he reacted. He says, this is the worst period I recall since I've been in public service. There's nothing like it, including the crisis. Remember October 19th, 1987, when the Dow went down by a record amount, 23%? I thought that was the bottom of all potential problems, but this has a corrosive effect that won't go away. And he just keeps going on and on and on. He says, but at the heart of it is the euro currency. And he doesn't expect this to go away. He expects to see this problem continue, because that's another issue. It's not just the immigration. It's not just the regulation coming out of Brussels, but it was also the economic disasters that were created by the euro currency and the way they mismanaged that, which also created a flood of immigrants coming from some of the European countries into Britain. So that was a double whammy in terms of immigration having to be able to absorb the workers. It's great to see all the pollsters wrong and all these pundits and economists and elitists and globalists. They've been proven wrong, and the people have rejected them, haven't they, Paul?
They've rejected them. This is the dawn of a new populist revolt. This is truly an uprising. But what I want to warn against, and this is what I've talked about in a video that's going to go up on Infowars.com in about 20 minutes' time, is the battle has just begun. Yeah. We haven't won the war. This is the start of the process. So what you're going to see, and you're already seeing it today, is the economic uncertainty, the financial woes will be blamed on Brexit. Understand, everything bad that happens going forward will be blamed on Brexit, even to the point where there's a Daily Mirror article, that was obviously a heavily in favor of vote Remain, saying that the next attack, the next ISIS attack in Europe will be Brexit's fault, basically, because Brexit has paralyzed Europe. Again, nothing to do with Islam. Let's not talk about that.
Yeah.
The next terror attack will be blamed on Brexit. That's what they're saying. The next economic downturn will be blamed on Brexit, even though, as we pointed out, for years, this bubble has been about to burst. It's been inevitable for years. But when it finally pops, they're going to blame it on Brexit. So then they're going to go back and say, well, this has caused chaos. What we need is either a new deal with the EU to stay in it, but kind of get some token sovereignty back, or they'll just have a second referendum. Remember, this is what the EU has done over and over again. They're completely anti-democratic. France, Ireland, the Netherlands, other countries all voted to reject EU mandates. They made them vote again until they got the result they want. These people are complete snakes. They're going to pull any kind of dirty trick imaginable to, try and snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. That's what's coming. That's what we need to guard against.
Oh, absolutely. It's a process, as one of the headlines said, this is going to be a complex and long-lasting divorce if this thing works out. They're not even talking about changing Cameron until October. but it's a process that could take a couple of years to wind its way through. They don't really know how this is going to work. And as you point out, rightfully so, Paul, they're going to blame everything on Brexit. Already today, they're telling everybody that, making the case that the UK shot itself in the FTSE. You know, the stock index, the FTSE is pronounced FTSE for those of you not watching it in London. But they're saying that all of this volatility that we see there, where is that coming from? Of course, that's coming from the traders and the central bankers who are the globalists who were trying to keep Britain in the EU. And of course, they're going to be manipulating the market. That's what they do. And this truly is just the beginning of a war. As I said before, we had the Declaration of Independence, July 4th, 1776. The war had not even really, well, there had been some shooting prior to that. April 19th, they went to take the guns in Lexington. So this was about 3 months later. But bottom line is the war really had not started at that point. That was the very beginning. So this is Britain's Declaration of Independence. The war is going to be an information war. It's going to be a financial war. They're going to tell everybody, look, you're getting poor. And as you just said, Paul, everything is going to be blamed on Brexit.
Yeah, and they've got an army of left-wing collectivist morons to back them up. This is the problem. Already today, we have a new petition that's going to be debated in Parliament because it's past the threshold. 154,000 signatures already. EU referendum rules triggering a second EU referendum. This is what they're going to keep pushing.
Wow.
They're going to say, because it was a close vote, 48% to 52%, we need to do this properly because it's so important. So we need to just make sure that this is the case. Even though the turnout here is so high, Vote Leave won by, I think it was over 1 million votes in the end. But this is what they're going to push because these people are anti-democratic. They're authoritarians just by the frothing reaction on social media alone today. And I've posted it up on my Twitter page, some of it. You can see that these people, some of them aren't going to back off. They're going to push for a second referendum until they get the result they want because they don't believe in democracy. They don't believe in the democratic will of the British people. So they're going to be supported by the political establishment in the move for that second referendum. They're going to try and pull this. So it's up to us to stop that from happening.
Wow. Wow. Now, I got to say, before we go any further, I love your new background there. Instead of the map that's usually behind you, I like the Union Jack. What's going to happen in Scotland, you think? Are they going to get another referendum for leaving the UK?
Well, of course, Scotland, the vast majority of them voted to remain because they're completely dependent on England mainly. So, yes, they're going to have, it looks like, another independence referendum. So they can basically stay in the EU, and because they're dependent on this corrupt, failing institution. So good luck to them. I mean, the Scottish independence thing was a little bit different from this. It had different agendas, different motives behind it, but it does look like it's gonna trigger another vote in Scotland for their independence.
Let me ask you about the fisheries issue, because as you've pointed out, and as others have pointed out, and I guess we'll get to it when we come back. There's not been any control by Britain on the North Atlantic Fishing Commission. They don't really have direct representation like some of the other countries do. I mean, are the fishermen now going to be allowed to fish, or is that going to have to wait for months or years? Because that's the whole issue. If they can string this thing out, show only the disadvantages, but not let people enjoy any of the new freedoms that they would get being out of the EU. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, and we're here with Paul Joseph Watson from the UK. We're talking about Brexit. It's Brexit, baby. They're single again, and this is going to be a long divorce. It is going to be an opportunity during this divorce for the rejected spouse, the EU, to try to make things as miserable as possible for the UK, and that's what we've been talking about with Paul Joseph Watson. Before we go back to Paul, I just want to remind you that the way you keep InfoWars free and independent, and it is a very valuable ally, I hope you understand, in this information war. The way you keep us free and independent is by your support, and we really appreciate that. And so we offer these specials from time to time. Our best-selling supplement here, the Rolls-Royce, the all-in-one cleansing product, Deep Cleanse, is now 20% off at InfoWarsLife.com. Again, this is our fastest-selling InfoWars Life formula. We keep selling out of it for weeks and months at a time, but we not only have it back in stock now, but we have it at 20